Again, you're interrupting my reading? I'm just kidding. Hi guys, welcome back to Sandra's Shelf. So today, as you can tell, the setup is a bit different because I'm in my office slash library, so you have my books behind me. And today I'm going to share 5 separate tips that have helped me read more in my life. Personally, I read around 75 to 100 books a year. And that might seem like a big and large number, but it's totally achievable, and I'll tell you why. If you, say example, read an hour a day, and an hour reading, even for slow readers, even me, I'm actually a fairly slow reader. An hour can result anywhere between 40 to 60 pages for slow readers, or up to, 80 pages for quicker readers. And it all depends on what you're reading and what the reading material is. But around, let's say, an hour is around 50 pages of reading. Now, say you have 7 days a week where you actually read an hour a day, and that's 7 hours, and that's actually 350 pages. And 350 pages is actually the length of most novels, or the approximate length. In that way, you read a book a week, and then therefore 52 books a year. Now, say you wanted to read 2 books a week, and therefore 100 books a year. All you would have to do is to double that time. So say you spend an hour in the morning, an hour at night, and there you go. You have 2 books guaranteed per week. Or, you can say, all right, I'll spend an hour every day, and on the weekends, I'll spend 3 hours reading just for fun because I want to, read more, or read like around 70 books a year. It's actually simple math, and it's simple like habit building. Before we jump into that, I just want to say that these tips are for people that are non-readers, casual readers, entertainment readers, non-fiction readers, people that actually do read a lot and want to read more still. I think these tips are for everyone. And I think lately with, the rise of popularity of books online and reading online, it's kind of hard for new readers to see themselves represented or feel supported. Like they feel kind of ashamed that they haven't read that much, so they're like, why start now? And as everything in our capitalistic society, we've like enforced these ideals of, quantity and competition, and who's gonna read more books at the end of the year. On the one hand, it's good to keep accountable and to have like these big set goals, but on the other hand, it can be very detrimental, because if I start thinking about all the books that I haven't read, which there are a lot compared to the books that I have read, I start to get nervous, start to pick up so many books, and I don't finish anything because I'm like, but I should read this book, and I should read that book, and I should do this, and I should. So instead, I would like to focus on the things that matters, to read the books that actually grab my attention, to establish a good routine that actually pushes me to prioritize reading in my life, even if it's just an hour a day, because as you will see, an hour a day actually goes a very long way, and you don't have to spend that hour a straight hour. You can split it up with half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the night, or like during your commute. And that's how actually most people do steadily read and keep on reading. It's not always about when you see online these people that do like the 24-hour reading challenges. Sure, they'll read 3 to 5 books in 24 hours. That's not a sustainable activity, and it's not a sustainable activity that everyone can participate in. I have these tips and tricks that can actually be used by everyone and anyone, as long as you want to use them and you find them helpful for you. Before feeling intimidated about reading and sharing your own goals of reading, I feel like everyone starts somewhere in their reading journey. Reading is like anything else in your life. It can be a hobby, it can be a habit, it can be a goal, it can be a personal preference. It could be so many things that you want it to be and that you decide to be. I know that like when people talk to me about reading and they always ask me for advice and tips, they're like, I could never read as many books that you can. And you know what? Fair. Maybe that's because they don't have reading as a priority, which I totally understand. Even me, reading is a priority for me. And this year, more than any other year, I've struggled to obtain my reading routine. So don't feel discouraged if other people read more than you. If you're just starting out and say you want to read all the big classics and you're intimidated by the language, the length, etc., just give yourself time. It's not gonna happen overnight. The purpose of reading is plentiful. Like for me, I personally read for entertainment, for escapism, and to gain knowledge and insight, and not only from nonfiction but especially from fiction itself, because fiction allows me to see how we rationalize things, how characters, even if they're not me or someone I know, rationalize the way of thinking, how they fall into patterns, how they use language and description and expressions to, portray themselves. And in that sense, it has allowed me to be a stronger writer myself, to harness a stronger voice, to understand the world around me and different cultures, because you need to think that behind every book, there is a separate mind behind every book. So there is someone out there that is wholly probably different than you, or they can be in the same country, sex, gender, the same age, everything, the same race as you, but still their experience and the way that they portray the world, either in their fiction and non-fiction, can be still wholly different and revealing to you. That is literally the beauty of stories and the beauty of reading. Having said that, and having exposed my undying love for reading and literature, let's jump right into the tips. Tip number 1 is to set goals. Obviously, we just discussed this, but when you set goals, you're more likely to prioritize reading in your life because you actually set concrete, obtainable, manageable, tangible goals. A lot of the most famous reading goals that I see online is on Goodreads, where people set how many books they want to read in the year. You can have like 52 books a year, which averages off to like 1 book a week, or you can have 100 books a year, which is like more like 2 books, 1.5 books per week. You can also go by chapters, so like read 5 chapters every night, or you can go by time, read half an hour every night, or you can also go by pages, such as read 50 pages every day. You can also go by genre. Maybe you read a lot of fiction, but you want to start reading more nonfiction. So you might say to yourself, okay, so for every 2 to 5 fiction book, I need to read a nonfiction book because I want to read a nonfiction book and I want to learn more about certain things. So the best way to stick with your goals is to actually track your progress. So I would recommend to use a bullet journal, a reading journal, or your personal journal and calendar to actually track and, check mark every day if you've accomplished your reading goal. And like that, you're actually more accountable, and at the end of the week or at the end of the month, you can see how many days you actually did willingly or were able to accomplish your reading goal. And therefore for the next month, you can see, okay, you know what, actually reading at night does not suit me because I am too tired and I want to fall asleep right away. But if I do it in the first thing in the morning, then I am more likely to, be aware, be conscious, and be awake while I read, and it sets a good tone for my day. That's all an example. I know a lot of people that like reading more in the morning instead of the night, vice versa. Or I know people that like to read especially in the morning and especially at night, and they don't do any day reading, while there are other people that prefer to read, maybe on their lunchtime. So it all depends on you, and if you want to achieve a goal, you should be able to track it and you should be able to review it to see your own habits and the way you approach your reading. So that's the 3 keywords here when setting goals for your reading. You need prioritization, you need mindfulness, and you basically need to establish a habit. And like I said, that's why it's especially important to have something to track your reading journey and your reading goals. And that's why I recommend highly to have a journal that you dedicate to reading and to your goals of reading. You can write all the books you want to read this year. You can write your thoughts, even, like a little reviews for yourself so you can remember what you read. And the more engaged you are with your reading, the more fun and value you'll find into it, and the more likely you're actually going to prioritize time to actually read. And this will come as no surprise that my second tip involves blocking time for reading. Because obviously if you want to read more, you need to dedicate a little bit more time to reading. So when my friends come to me and ask me, Sandra, how do you read so much? How can I read more? How can I actually read? And I tell them, okay, when you want to read, you should try to put your phone aside or your electronics aside. Whatever usually occupies your mind, you should replace it with reading. So by setting aside your phone for like 15-20 minutes and you say to yourself, you're not allowed to use it, you're not allowed to look at it until like the timer is up, then you kind of shift your brain and your mind and you develop the habit and the muscle that it takes to actually sit down and concentrate and read for 20 minutes without interruptions. Now, when you first do this at the beginning, it's really hard. I didn't think I ever had a reading problem until I start realizing that I've been too much on, say, my phone, or I've been doing multitasking too much. So when it comes to reading lately, I can't sit for more than like 45 minutes up to an hour without itching to like touch my laptop to see like my business analytics, or to touch my phone to see if I've had any like, you know, notifications or anything like that. And so it's really hard. And reading is quite interesting because it's one of the only things that requires your full attention and full focus. We can read while we're listening to music and we'll have no problem. However, if you put me in a setting where there's a lot of people talking, I might have some more difficulty reading, especially if the people are like expecting a response from me. So if I'm in a setting where people are just randomly talking, I'm okay with that, you know, like in a coffee shop or whatever. But if I'm in a setting where my parents are talking and I know my parents that for a fact they're like anticipating me to be reading and paying attention because they know I'm a like master multitasker. But with reading, it's very tricky because you have the words on the page and you have words coming into the ears. It kind of pushes you to tune out one thing. So either you're going to tune out the words on the page or you're going to tune out whatever music or stimuli elsewhere is coming. So at the beginning, reading in complete silence, for example, or reading just very focused reading for 20 minutes can actually feel like the hardest thing to do. And again, don't despair because it will take you like literally the development of your brain power and your brain muscle to actually get used to reading without being distracted. And then one day, without even knowing, you might be able to read 30 minutes to an hour without any distractions and with great ease. So you know what, just keep going and don't feel down on yourself if you can't concentrate, or if 15 minutes at the beginning seems very hard and like after like 5 minutes you're like itching to like look at your phone or look at something. So just know that it's not easy for anyone, and if it is easy for someone, it's because they have practiced and spent a lot of time reading and developing that skill. Like anything else, at the end of the day, it is a skill, and it's a skill that anyone can build. So my third tip might sound a bit weird, but it's something that has worked for me and that I've seen work for other people. I recommend reading in different genres and in different forms. Now, this is a bit different if you're the type of person that like really hates all the other genres and all the other formats, then I guess this tip will not work for you because you've already decided that you only like this genre. Say you only like mystery, then I don't think this tip can be helpful for you if I tell you, you know, maybe you should read romance. You'll be like, I don't like romance. But you can try to genre bend, but you can try to read, say, mystery that has a lot of romantic elements and see how you would like that better. It will give you that break from always reading those same mysteries that you read. Not to say that mysteries are not unique, because every genre has their own elements that make up the genre. So when I mean that like when I go into romance, my expectations as a reader, I expect there's a couple, there's a relationship, there's things building, and there might be either a light atmosphere or a heavy atmosphere, but I know that there's romantic elements in there. And it's the same thing when you read a mystery. You know that there might be a murder, there might be some strange things happening, the atmosphere might be cold and dark and suppressing, oppressing. So you know what I mean? So when you change that up, if like say you feel like you're in a reading slump, that can actually spark more interest in you, and it can actually show you that a lot of the genres actually work together, whereas we're always led to believe that they work against each other. And so then similarly, if you're reading a book and you're just not feeling it, sometimes I do recommend picking up another book, and you might pick up this other book and read it like from start to finish, or you might read it in the next few days, and then after you feel ready to come back to a certain other book. There's so many books like this that where I feel like they require so much more time and effort on my part, and also like time as in more time to process. So there are books like, you know, some classics where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna read like part 1, I'm gonna read so many other things that I want to read in between, so I don't feel like I'm constantly stalling my reading because I don't feel like picking that book up, and then I'll come back to it. As a personal rule, I like to finish books, but I'm not hard pressed if I finish the book, say a few months later or a few weeks later than I initially intended, because that's kind of what reading is like. You sometimes need to read things in accordance with your mood. So if you really feel like light and giddy and you want to read something light and giddy, reading like something that's very hard hitting and depressing in that moment might turn you off from reading completely for the next few days. I would like try to pick up another book and then see how it goes from there. I read anywhere between 5 to 10 books at a time, and I know it's not for everyone, and that's probably one of the more extreme cases, but at the end of the month, I still end up finishing anywhere between 5 to 10 books. So it's a fine balance of understanding what kind of reader you are and what kind of mood and reading mood you're in. Sometimes it's not a matter of mood and you actually need to accomplish reading a book, say like for class or any other event or obligations that you set yourself up with reading. Say you have like a book club, then yeah, of course you're gonna have to push yourself a little bit and read the full thing through. But in other cases, if you're just reading for yourself and your personal enjoyment, I don't see why you cannot halt a reading and continue other books and then come back to what you were initially reading. That's just my opinion. That's just what has worked for me all these years. Similarly, you can also read in different formats. By different formats, I mean like maybe you want to read in the morning some nonfiction and you like to read it on a physical book so you can take down notes. And then at nighttime before going to bed, you might want to read a romance on your e-reader because you know you don't want that much light and you don't want to hold something physically, and that kind of has that separation, but you're still reading. So you spent like half an hour doing that type of reading and half an hour doing that other type of reading, and by the end of the week you are going to finish 2 books, one nonfiction physical and then one fiction romance that's, you know, on a e-reader. And the same thing goes with audiobooks. Audiobooks are really good to get you through books quickly because, you know, someone else is narrating the book for you, and you know, you hear different voices and you see like a different take on a book, and that also can greatly help your reading journey and your reading experience. As of late, I've really been enjoying classic audiobooks because with classics, sometimes you're not too sure about a word or you're not too sure how it's pronounced because you only have ever seen it in print versus like in common day speech. And so listening to an audiobook and hearing someone else do it actually saves me some time, because sometimes I'm sitting there for like half a second or half a minute being like, how do you say this word? Like, what does this word really mean? But hearing it out loud kind of changes the context because you actually don't have to overthink it too much. You actually hear it and you can understand the sentence more quickly because you're not focused on the pronunciation. I don't know if any of that made sense, but to me it makes sense. So let me know if that made sense to you. My 4th tip is to buddy read books. Buddy reading books is actually so fun and so cool because you have another person that is actually reading the same book as you, and although they might have different perspectives and reactions to the book, at least they're keeping you accountable, and at least you have them along the journey where you can discuss what you've read and push each other to like read more or read at a certain date so you guys can move on to another book, say if you don't enjoy that book or if you find it too long and heavy and whatever. So it's actually really encouraging to have someone else read books with you. Sometimes you don't even have to be reading the same book. Sometimes it could just be like spending like half an hour, you know, going for a little picnic and just, you know, you and your friends or you and your significant other might spend like half an hour just reading, and it feels good because you're kind of spending time with people, but you're also like encouraging each other to like set the time and focus on reading, and it's just a lovely thing to do. It actually enriches the reading experience because reading can seem very solitary because you're the only one that's consuming the information for your own brain, but it doesn't have to be. And that's why actually we study literature, and that's why we get involved in book clubs, and we start YouTube channels around books and literature, because we want to inspire other people and we want to be inspired by other people when it comes to reading and when it comes to consuming good books. So that's really a valuable tip, and that is a tip that has really helped me a lot. And I really enjoy when my friends come and reach out to me and they're like, Sandra, I want to read more, do you want to read with me? And I'm like, my answer is always a yes. And it's so exciting. Even for me, who already reads a lot, I just feel like passionate and excited to read and see other people fall in love with reading as well. So just think about that. Because the thing is, you're not only keeping each other accountable, but you're actually like having a more solid foundation of being connected and communicative, because sometimes if you're reading the same book or you're reading a good book, you want to share it with the person that you're friends with or that you're with, because you want them to experience those same feelings and emotions, and you want them to pick up this really good book. And in that sense, people have always found things to say when talking about a book, even if it's like contradictory opinions. And that's the power of books, that's the power of literature, and that's very beautiful. So along that same mentality, that brings us to tip number 5, which is to join reading communities. So say you don't have people in your life that like reading, or they have no interest in reading. Thankfully, nowadays for the internet, there are online reading communities, and they're completely free, and they're actually everywhere. I have joined a new reading community that I had never thought of joining before, up until like the last few months when I started, making videos on TikToks as well, because there's a lot of people that talk about books on TikTok, and it's called Book Talk. And before that, I've only been on BookTube, so YouTube channel that discuss books, or I've only been on Bookstagram, so Instagram accounts that only discuss books and share books and literature. Now it's really cool to see that there are readers on every platform, and they're there to talk books, and they're there to recommend books, and they're there to read with other readers that are at any place in the world, and they just want to encourage reading, and they want to have friends that are also readers, that also like the same type of literature, or that will recommend different type of literature. And I think that's really beautiful. That's very powerful, and it's something that we need to profit from, and it's something that we need to not take for granted, because a few years back that would have not been possible. Unless you had a book club or a book group, or you knew people that like reading, then you would have no other way to discuss this love of reading. I remember when I was a kid, it was very solitary in the fact that no one else around me actually liked reading. I would have to sit there and talk for 30 minutes with my friends, and make them passionate about what I was saying about a book, for them to actually be like, you know what, maybe I'll try to read a book, because I don't like reading and I don't like books, but the way you explain the story and the way you're excited about the story actually intrigues me. Maybe I will like reading, maybe I will like this book. And that was the way it was back then, I find, especially when I was growing up, because it was like I felt like an alien for reading. I was bullied for reading, which is the funniest thing now if you think about it, because now we've had a cultural shift where it's like, you are the hot girl if you're reading, you are the educated girl if you're reading. And now we're taking this in the opposite direction, and we run with it. And yeah, it's cool, but at the same time, it also cultivates shameful actions and behaviors to people that are, say, non-readers, or people that don't read that much and that want to get into reading. So you know what I mean? It's like a different side of the same coin. And I don't like that. I like that we are engaged in reading, we are passionate about reading, we are encouraging about reading, we have open communities, diversified communities of readers and of voices of authors and writers. And that is what I stand for, and that is why my channel is actually called Sandra's Shelf, because it is a way that I see and I've read my life and my experiences that I want to transcribe and I want to share with other people. knowing very well that they're reading a different kind of book at the same time. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it showed you how you can read more books, how you can be more inspired and engaged with your reading. Please do let me know what are some tips and tricks that you use to read more books. What are some videos that you want to see, related to books and related to reading and how to read, or how to, annotate, or how to be more engaged with your reading. I will have a part 2 to this video because this is just 5 tips out of my 10 tips that I have to offer, but I wanted to keep this video short and sweet, short and light, so that you can have more time to read your books. As always, all the links and everything that I've talked about will be down below, so please take a look at that, take a look at the website. And for now, goodbye, and I will see you on the next book. Wait, that was wrong. And for now, goodbye, and I will see you on the next shelf.